Great venue, and welcome to everybody online. We really look forward to having discussions around this topic. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you to Cross River Partnership for hosting this event and arranging this. So many thanks go to Rachel. So my name is Amanpreet Arnold, and I'm the Property Exchange Programme Manager. Just joined the role 3 weeks ago, and I'm delighted to be here today to learn more about from our speakers what they're going to be telling us about their project and so on. Just briefly on so the agenda is, as you can see on there, where I'll be talking to introduce you to Property Exchange, and then we've got John Luca, who is going to be telling us about the bid in Harlem and Brixton and how that kind of works with property stewardship, and followed by Stephanie, who will be talking about her project that she's worked on as founding director of Urban Symbiotic. And then Rachel will be touching on the town centred report that she'll talk later, and then we'll have a roundtable discussion. I'm just going to quickly tell you a bit more about Property Exchange. So what is Property Exchange? It was launched last year, and it's about diverse voices coming together, sharing experience and fresh ideas to create thriving high street property that works for all Londoners. And we don't want to limit ourselves to Londoners, because we do want to hear about examples from elsewhere, internationally, nationally. Any innovative practices we really would like to showcase and platform on Property Exchange. So Property Exchange is a platform to promote diverse voices in conversations about the future of high street property. It's about building an inclusive network and supportive network of passionate high street champions, from property owners and developers to tenants and community voices. We also aim to share and surface innovative ideas, show how property can help address high street challenges, and to inspire collaboration, experimentation, knowledge exchange to secure social value and sustainability, and also inform policy and mainstream good practice. And we would like to thank our founding partners in creating this, so that the Confederation of British Industry Cross River Partnership, Federation of Small Businesses, BPF, London Council, London First, Gardens of the Arches, and TfL Property. This would not be possible without their support. And these are kind of call to action to join the active network on LinkedIn. Please do follow us, because that's kind of where we talk about ideas and we know the value of our network. We also have Instagram and Twitter, so you can find us to engage with our wider network and find out of upcoming events and content. We encourage you to look at our past exchanges on the website, and there are new stories being added every month. And also, please do come up if you do want a future exchange with us by bringing a great project, inspiring an idea, an interesting challenge to our attention. Now, today, really excited to be here with our panelists to discuss town centre stewardship. We'll be talking about how different types of organisation can promote proactive management and stewardship of the high street property to create more resilient and dynamic places. We are joined today with expert placemakers, John Luca, the Managing Director of the Brixton Big, Stephanie Edwards, Founding Director of Urban Symbiotic, and Rachel Aldrich, Communication Project Manager. So I'm going to pass on to John Luca, who will be telling us more about neighbourhood twinning. He is a management specialist with over 10 years experience in the business improvement district industry. He leads the Brixton Big as well as the Stratford Original Big in East London. He's passionate about places and firmly believe that people make places. So over to you, John Luca. You might have to press the slide as you go along, because that's not working.
I'll just press on it. Yeah. Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks to the CRP team for the invite and for being here. So my presentation is not kind of property-led or property-specific per se, but I kind of want to share with you a story of what we've done in Brixton, and then hi, Susie, and then kind of maybe pick up some thoughts around kind of what the opportunities for properties in the high streets might be. So I have to click on it. So first of all, to introduce ourselves as a bit, not sure whether you guys are familiar with the whole concept, but essentially we are a business improvement district, which is a non-for-profit organization that is fully funded and led by local businesses. Later this year, we were gonna be turning 10, and we're gonna have a renewal ballot to celebrate that, hopefully to secure another 5 years. We are democratically elected by the businesses, so every 5 years we have to go to a ballot. I would say we are a medium-sized bid, so we represent over 500 local businesses with a levy of income of around £500,000 a year. We've been established back in 2014 to support the traditional independent businesses that kind of form the core of Brixton as a place. Our local economy has a value of £2 billion annually, and the key element for me is to explain that 40% of that spend happens after 6 p.m, so a huge nighttime economy. And always use Brixton as a example of a successful place because it's a place that works during the day and the night. So he has a very strong daytime offer with the indoor and outdoor markets, retail, as well as obviously a strong offer in the evening with hospitality, music, and so on. Again, for those of you that might not be familiar with Brixton, we pride ourselves to be first for many things. We are regarded as the black capital of Britain. We are very much about diversity and community as a place. We have world famous streets and music venues. We are home of Electric Avenue, which is the very first street in London to be lit by electricity. Bon Marché, which is actually the very first department store, purpose-built department store in the country. I mentioned earlier the role that the nighttime economy plays in Brixton, and is by percentage the largest one in the country. And also we are home to incredible businesses. Some of you might know, but actually Marks & Spencer had the first unit, actually. You can see in the picture that one of the arches, as well as businesses like Franco Manca and Isberger that kind of started off in Brixton, and then they went they grew to go across the nation. And then also Brixton is home of many incredible people. Obviously the Windrush generation. This year we're actually going to be celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Windrush generation. And again, obviously the uprising in 1981. We are also very much home of what I would think are social and economic inequalities, with the narrative of gentrification being very much present in the place. However, also like within the proximity of the town centre and the high street, some of the most deprived wards in the UK. We're also home of radical thinkers and activists, famous for our music, food, street art. We have our own Brixton, our own currency, the Brixton pound, our own beer, the Brixton brewery, our own rum, the Market Raw rum, our own gin, the streetwear. We're pretty much ready to be fully independent as the independent Republic of Brixton. I'm saying that. We are the only creative enterprise zone in Lambeth, and obviously I mentioned earlier the home of the gentrification narrative. So when I thought this is the context is quite relevant, because looking at the past and the present of Brixton and what it means to to people and to us as a community, we kind of felt that there were some themes that came out of that, and we then did this exercise of identifying what I kind of call Brixton values, which are all about diversity, inclusivity, and quality and justice. And these are very much, in my view, embedded in the place, obviously, in terms of the people that have made Brixton in the past and continue to make Brixton today. And kind of, in that process, I kind of come up with a definition maybe around, place values in general, and which in our view are like the principles or standards of behavior specific to a place, and kind of argue that every place will actually benefit from having a clear understanding on their own values, and more importantly, to act upon them to achieve their ambitions. And I kind of, set this in because this is kind of, what I think for me Brixton is about. And I've been in the area in the Brixton bid for like 8 years, and I feel like I made it through like the stage of being accepted in the community. But then kind of what I wanted to talk to you today is very much about acting upon the place values that we identified. And like the story kind of starts back in 2020 when there was the murder of George Floyd, and back in 2020, and we at that time there was a massive rise of like all sorts of movements calling for justice in general, specifically social, economic, racial, and environmental justice. And kind of that kind of really resonated with us in our community. And obviously, again, the political context, it was Trump American, Brexit Britain, I'm going to say the B word. And the context was about division, I guess, and for us in Brixton, we kind of want to obviously be aware of divisions, in terms of young and old, and black and white, and new and old, and so we kind of wanted to move away from this division. And what happened is that straight after the murder of George Floyd, I received I think it was a mail, like a email shot from the bid in Harlem, who had a previous relationship with the president CEO Barbara. And essentially what they've done actually as a response to that, and to kind of ensure that the community had a safe space to share the views and the values, was actually to create some they call them canvases for change, but to kind of enable people to go into the streets of Harlem to kind of share the messages of fear, of hope, of change in general. And that's when we looked at us and we felt like doing nothing wasn't an option for us. So as a kind of first response, we came up with the concept of putting up I think it was like around 36 banners across the high street with some lampposts, and we came up with these 4 key messages about defining what I guess Brixton is: community, the movement of Black Lives Matter, and also what Black owned and BAME owned and means to us. And for us was very much a story of reassurance to the community and the communities that we have in Brixton, that no matter who you are, you belong here, and this is a place, and this is a place where everybody is welcome. And that's when I kind of reconnected with Barbara from Harlem, and then we kind of explained to her, like, you inspired me to do something for Brixton. This is what we've done, and then we started exploring kind of what the 2 places have in common, I guess, the common thread. So we looked at the cultural offer in the area. We looked at the importance of music and venues and festival and celebration for both places. We looked at the community and the arts and the creatives that we have in both areas. Obviously the cultural and political figures that came from Harlem and Brixton, as well as also again the line people make places, the social demographic of the area, as well as the people that kind of make the places. And then I then commissioned also like a piece of research to kind of like go beyond what is obvious in terms of what the places share. And obviously we looked at the languages, food and religions, the migration patterns of the places as well, and then the history of activism and advocacy, as well as like the fact that both places are kind of going through, like, for some, I guess, what might be like a process of gentrification, which again is linked to also like social deprivation. And then we kind of came up with with, you know, a concept that I guess is not new, you know, is to the concept of like city twinning is not new, but I want to believe we are the first or one of the first twinning between neighbors and between business improvement district. And we then kind of, you know, like united together in terms of, you know, the mission, which is about raising the quality of the life of the communities that we represent. And actually in that picture, you can see us. So there was a delegation of 11 representatives from Brixton going over to Harlem to actually meet with the BID, with the community there, and to experience, you know, what Harlem is about. And also, you know, to get ideas of, you know, what, you know, we are going to talk about in a second. And these actually are, you know, beautiful representation of kind of the two places. On the left-hand side, we have the key landmarks from Harlem, and on the right-hand side, obviously, Brixton. We're lucky to have like an architectural firm that have donated these illustration to us, and we've been using it to kind of, you know, promote the whole twinning between the two places. And then, you know, as I said, so there was a piece of research that we commissioned. We went over on a trip in terms of, you know, learning and exchange and, you know, sharing ideas. And then we wanted to really bring the whole concept to life. And what we did, we actually delivered a 5 days festival last summer. We were able to secure some funding from Lambeth Council, and we were able to deliver a celebration, I want to call it, you know, events, activities, panel discussions. We identify across the kind of many common threads. You know, we celebrated music, food and drinks, but also like we had some talks around business, both about culture and gentrification and change, and, you know, what it means for our communities. And, you know, we kind of, you know, obviously very much work with our local community. So we had many of our venues directly involved in the delivery, and also supporting many creatives. So yeah, I kind of, you know, talked about already kind of the whole point of, you know, us sharing as organization and learning from each other as places. A delegation from Harlem came over to Brixton for the festival. And then the whole point of us was also actually to facilitate connections across the two areas. So matching like the theater in Harlem with our Brixton House Theater, for example, but also one more fun as well. You know, we are lucky to have the Brixton Brewery in Brixton, and there is the Harlem Brewing Company that actually came up with a special brew to celebrate the twinning, and the illustration was used in the cans, for example. Yeah, the whole point of for us of the festival, and this is like some images for you to see what we, you know, we delivered. You know, the whole point was around kind of at a time of division, we felt that actually is unity that create better communities. And we felt that, you know, because of the similar challenges that both Brixton and Harlem face, was, you know, like a beautiful way to come together, actually show this unity and creating better communities. And, you know, kind of, you know, we argue that obviously creating better places will result in a better economy in society. And we're doing this in Brixton and Harlem by celebrating what the shared values are. And obviously, you know, from a bid perspective, it was important to actually deliver benefits to the levy payers and the business community with, you know, of course, marketing, PR, and collaborations between organizations. Yeah, I guess that was my story today.
Brilliant.
Thank you. That was a really good example of how you've managed to make international connections work and celebrate the identity of each community, and, you know, just strengthen the identity of those areas. And it's great that it's still ongoing and keeping those relationships going. So I'm glad to hear that it was like one of the first neighbourhood twinning bids, as you call it. I'm going to now introduce you to our next presenter, who's Stephanie Edwards, and she's a user-focused architect and urban designer and co-founder of Urban Symbiotic. She developed strategic master plans, community-placed vision, and meanwhile activation programs, amongst others. She's working on a numerous co-created high street and regeneration strategies in London, in the UK, globally, with UN Habitat Global Future Cities programme. So I'm going to hand over to her to talk about how she's going to take a community approach to developing property in place stewardship. Stephanie, would you like to come up?
Hello, hi, lovely to be here. Hello, hi. So my name's Stephanie Edwards, and as I was introduced, I'm an architect and urban designer. And at Urban Symbiotics, we really focus on putting people at the focus of anything that we do at all different scales, whether that's from high street strategies to regeneration strategies, master plans, or even small spaces. And I'm going to talk to you today about property stewardship on the high street, but really look at that co-created approach. And how do we do this? We usually use a 4-step process. The first stage is really that understanding of the area from the demographic, from the users, the community, the stakeholders, the landowners, the clients. And we really try and understand that real basis so that we understand if we're going to be co-creating a vision, that we're really reaching all of the people in the area, but also understanding who owns those assets, what's derelict, and what are the opportunities for change. The next stage is really about that participation, how we can start to look at co-creation strategies and participation strategies, working to reach some of the communities that are underserved, those who have a power to be transformed to make great change. And then that idea of realization. As an architect as well, we really like to look at wide solutions, but also testing, so we can start to test and test to make the changes valuable, to see what works, what doesn't work. And then finally taking it on to owning and using, how you can embed that into programming, adaptation, and care. And so I'm going to talk about one project in particular about how we use this process and how it's really unlocked the potential of a high street in London. So this London High Street is Dagenham Heathway, so almost on the opposite side of Brixton, northeast London, right at the edge. And we at Urban Symbiotics were appointed by BFirst, so they are the development arm of Barking and Dagenham Council, wholly owned but also wholly independent. So we really looked at how we can action that high street stewardship. So in that first instance, as I spoke about, we really use data to really understand the areas that we look at. So in Barking and Dagenham, we have a very high youth population. It's very deprived. There is a real great diversity of different ethnicities, but actually it has a really troubled past in terms of it had a really quite flourishing community, then a lot of diversity quite quickly, then the rise of the BNP. So it's a bit of a let's say, challenging relationship amongst communities. But we really needed to understand who was there in order to really engage with those people. We also worked with TfL data to understand footfall numbers, visitor numbers, dwell times within this high street, which is the second town centre within Barking and Dagenham. We understood that even just after the pandemic, footfall numbers were still quite high, but the dwell times were very low. It was used as a place for convenience. People would come to the area for one shop at a time, just about two, and spend very short amounts of time on the high street. So there's real potential to really gain and really start to gather that footfall and really start to use that as an opportunity to stay a bit longer. Then in terms of that understanding of the area, you can see here this large area it's a large 60s shopping mall which BFirst acquired. The dark pink areas show the vacant shops. The lighter pink areas show underutilised and quite derelict open spaces with a lot of vulnerable activity and use, and also spaces such as non-overlooking car parking spaces. So a lot of different spots of challenges within the area where BFirst are looking at developing upon this area really needs to understand what is the vision if there's going to be development in the area, and how can the impact be also social, economic, and also environmental. So in the first instance, we used one of these derelict sites and turned this into a pilot shop. We called it My Heathway, almost as a front to actually start to translate to people, say, this is your area. If we look at stewardship, it's not just about who manages, who owns, but who also feels that sense of pride, that sense of agency. So it was a pilot shop to look at co-creating whilst reimagining what a space could be, what was needed in terms of that underutilized space, having a frontage for engagement, for conversation, to move forward into an area that's quite derelict, quite deprived, and not necessarily a destination, as a bit of a conversation starter as to how can it be different for you. So this space, we developed this as a pop-up space. It was a bit of an urban room, looking at having ideas walls, using visualizations, having people talk to us through workshop sessions with young professionals, with young people, elderly people, people who are just shopping and stopping for a while. But we also sought to use these spaces to also look at how we could translate that, use this frontage to feed back a vision, back hearing what we've heard from them, but also in a way that's really clear and accessible, not just on words, but also using visualization images. So for those who are not necessarily literate, could also still be part of the conversation. But it also started to look at developing that vision. We also did pop-ups, we did street conversations, and we understand that people wanted to change this My Heathway into an Our Heathway, understanding that it's not just in the developer remit to make that change and the funding, not just the community to make that change, not just some of the supermarket or the shopping centre managers, but actually everyone had a bit of that empowerment to make a change. So it's almost impact for people to see how they could change the area, but also using the infrastructure that was already available, such as the shopping centre, with lighting, with heating, with security, and turning these priorities of wanting a cleaner place, a safer place, an area that people could identify, into a vision that is a place that's active, that reflects the diversity of the area, that made a place that was a destination that's welcoming to all of the people that were using it, as a historic community and also new communities too. So co-creating and using, we co-created with, had an inclusive and varied approach. We spoke to groups that had different ability challenges. We had those who were younger people. We had other charities come and use the space, but actually was part of testing how a space on the high street could be used, and both in the daytime, but also in the twilight. And unlike Brixton, it's not quite a destination for the nighttime, understanding that we needed to extend into that twilight zone, make people stay a bit longer, to understand that the nighttime could be a place that could be utilised and managed and developed. Again, that co-creation is about understanding who are the existing stewards in the area. These are just some of the managers of the boxing club, a tech shop, and a charity shop, but they had some invisible stewardship of the area. Some looked after the younger people in the area, giving them the support through a channel of boxing as opposed to other means of use of their time. We had the manager of the tech shop who formed as an informal mentor for some of the people in the area, and the lady from the charity shop who sought to empower some of those who couldn't afford to go to interviews by having a pound rail, for example. So you can start to see how some of these areas are being used as not only shops for retail, but also community benefit, essentially. So the 4 stages of this really started to look at how we can use assets within the high street in the 4 different stages. The first being for community and support, knowing that there isn't necessarily one way of using these assets. At the time, there are about 5 different vacant shops, but they remain empty unless they're being used. So we're working with the community. How can we support them? How can we support a younger community to use these spaces? How can we start to redefine what community is to Barking and Dagenham in 2023? Establishing those community ambassadors, we really understood people that came to the shop, who had the power, who had the influence, who just needed and wanted to change, and how we could support them, whether that's through mentorship, incubating, allowing people to just have that support to change an idea into something that's real. But also about that vision and expression, it was great to see your posters, as Jean-Luc was showing, about how Brixton actually reflected the community. And we needed the same for Barking and Dagenham. So these co-created facades, co-created shop fronts, and a long-term strategy that then also starts to lean on these small pilots and testing of the different uses of areas, places and buildings. And then again, that continued property use. We just received some funding from DLUC last week, which was really good news for the area, that's now starting to pilot, being able to provide funding to pilot some of these additional activities. It then means that the resource is not only just a burden of the developers or the community, but also we have a great evidence base of thousands of insights and priorities and backing of both the community and clients and landholders to get additional funding for some of these requests. And then owning and using, again, it's not just the properties, but the spaces in between. In this 60s mall, there's a great large circulation space. We're now looking at programming, adaptation, having young people take over the spaces, just changing the music as something smaller to get people into the area, and having stalls which are really easy to set up to pilot a late evening, to pilot a weekend festival, and to start to showcase this on the walls and the frontage of this area that so needs a new change. So essentially, the co-created approach is now using that one area and the wider, for example, assets as a catalyst for change, looking at how co-creation can transform those underutilized spaces and really transform that into inclusive and sustainable community-owned, vibrant destinations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephanie. That was a really good take through on how property stewardship happened and the different stages, and it's quite key understanding your community and supporting them, as well as to help them inject some sort of vibrancy in the area, in the shopping centre. Next, I'm going to introduce you to Rachel Aldridge, who is a communication professional with a background in sustainability and interest in urban regeneration. She had delivered a cross-river partnership communication strategy and has led on the town-centred future project, which she's going to be telling us about. So over to you, Rachel.
Hi everyone, great to see so many people, both in person and on Teams. Sorry, I've been making notes. I'm going to put this down. Perfect. So, my name is Rachel Aldridge, Communications Project Manager at Cross River Partnership. I'll be talking today about CRP's High Streets work, specifically the Town Centre Futures Report, which we launched in 2021, and the recommendations for this, which have been actually put into action. I'd like to say thank you to the Property Exchange for facilitating this event with us, of which CRP is a founding partner. So the Property Exchange share fresh ideas to create thriving high street property that works for all. And I love how they spark discussions on social media about different stories. They've told the story of Not My Beautiful House case study, for example, which brought together a student union and an art school to create a community hub in Kingston in the middle of the pandemic. But yeah, examples like this are incredibly inspiring and definitely get me thinking about different patterns I've seen on my local high streets. Okay, so CRP, just as an introduction, Cross River Partnership's vision is to address sustainability challenges collaboratively in London and beyond. We support public, private, voluntary organisations to address creatively challenges around air quality, transport, placemaking and wellbeing. So with that, London's town centres shape our daily lives. I have a Slido for you to get you thinking about what inspires you. So hopefully you can use that if you go into the banner on Teams and click on the S. If you're in the room, you can go to slido.com as the numbers on the screen. There's 3 questions just to get you thinking. What's the best example of design on the high street that you've seen recently? What's the most inspiring thing you've seen on your local high street? And what does your ideal high street for communities look like? According to the GLA, 63% of Londoners walk to a high street. High streets also address the major challenges of social isolation and loneliness, connecting different groups of people. Town centres offer a wide range of jobs, impacts on our health and well-being and our identities. And I myself definitely feel a sense of urban patriotism, which is described as emotional, visceral attachment to big cities at the core of residents' identity. Our high streets and town centres are a huge part of that, kind of anchoring us to places we associate with happiness and quality of life. And there are certain high streets and town centres, I definitely associate with different times of life, but more than just buying items or walking past, they're a place to congregate, communicate and support each other. And of course, COVID had a huge impact on our high streets. So Town Centre Futures, the report was produced in response to the long-term challenges of the climate crisis, growth of online retail, Brexit, inequality and an ageing population. Of course, things like rail strikes and cost of living are challenges which have since been experienced, but all of these factors meant that a study was really welcome, giving placemakers an opportunity to tackle some of these challenges firsthand. So, Town Centre Futures is an innovative cross-sector report providing practical recommendations for London's local authorities, business improvement districts, landowners and other strategic agencies. The study offers input on how we can recover from the pandemic in a greener and cleaner way, enhancing the roles of London's town centres going forward. Research was delivered by Centre for London and interlinks transport, economic, environmental, cultural, health aspects of London's futures. We looked at 10 typologies across London, transecting London's major district and neighbourhood centres, suggesting short, medium and long-term practical recommendations. So the best practice case studies were outlined in the report to build inspiration for distinct groups. I've chosen Camden High Street, the independent culture example, just to run through today to give a bit of an idea about how the report works. So Camden High Street is a major centre. It's a cultural tourist destination with potential for regeneration. It's just outside the CAS and home to lots of iconic centres like the Roundhouse, the Electric Ballroom, but it's within the ULEZ zone and good cycle routes nearby, but dominated partially through car through traffic. So recommendations laid out in the report for the area include public realm improvements to allow visitors to spend more time on the high street. An increase in remote working has grown, so demand for local workspace and encouraging the use of vacant and neglected spaces can boost footfall. The risks of change include that some residents push back on measures like pedestrianising the high street due to fear of traffic displacement. And there's a focus on kind of attracting tourists, potentially risks alienating local residents. But one of Camden's key assets is the diversity of entertainment options on offer. So the COVID recovery vision produced for Camden High Street is an alternative town centre with opportunities for small local businesses, community cooperatives to flourish. Better lighting, for example, can make the public realm feel safer and secure and less dark, and value local heritage by lighting landmarks. Recommendations were the bulk of this report, and they include supporting London's creatives, boosting outdoor eating and drinking options, creating new ways to involve local people, optimising freight deliveries, and creating new workspaces for remote workers. So based on those topics, I'm going to share a few inspiring examples from London's high streets since the pandemic. So in terms of creating new workspaces, the report sets out that affordable places should be created, supporting remote workers, engaging users to understand their needs. And a really great example of this is 1087 Studios, a musical community open to all. They provide affordable, high-quality, long-term recording studios. Lambeth Council is enabling 1087 Studios to take over the basement of the new Brixton House development. This will provide a thriving community of local talent and support over 100 jobs, and this is all part of the Future Workspace Fund. Increasing meanwhile and temporary use spaces, also recommendations. The timescale of this was 2021 and beyond, likely to require a long-term strategy and collaborative planning. So the specific recommendation for local authorities was to engage residents on what they'd like from their town centre and encourage groups to put forward proposals for meanwhile uses of indoor and outdoor spaces that create social value. These spaces create room for experimentation, as seen in Pot Brixton and Peckham Levels, but the Hythe is a site of meanwhile use, work and community hub in the north of Southwark, sitting on the edge of the Rotherhithe Tunnel. It's set to be in place for 10 years, and meanwhile Space worked alongside Southwark Council and IFDO Architecture, and this project will really have community at the heart of it. Redesigning roads to make them child-friendly and healthier was also a recommendation laid out in the report, and this can be done by introducing designs that facilitate active travel and reduce access for vehicles that contribute to air pollution. Importantly for businesses, they can support customers to leave their car behind, offering fast delivery services for heavy and bulky items. This example can be seen in Brent, where Christmas trees are being moved by the East Street cargo bike. Of course, you can move lots of things by cargo bike, but that was part of our Clean Air Villages project, and a really nice example. And of course, the Strand Aldwych pedestrianisation, also a great example of road redesign. Westminster City Council have converted busy roadways into major new public space for enhanced pedestrianisation experience, including new crossings, wider footways, and green space. And yeah, I've obviously heard amazing examples from both our speakers as well, and I could go on for longer, but we will go on to our roundtable discussion. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel, and please do have a look at that report. It looks like there's lots of inspiring examples and recommendations. Now we're going to move on to roundtable discussion. So I'll be standing here while our panelists will be sitting over there, just because the camera is facing them for those people online. Would you mind giving them the microphone, please? Great. Well, now I'm excited to get into a bit of a discussion. So John Luca, I have a question for you. So Brixton Bid collaboration with Harlem must have been an interesting cross-Atlantic learning experience. What are some of the differences and similarities that you might point out, and how are individuals and organisations approach their role as stewards of a successful town?
Yeah, one of the key differences from a bid perspective, some of you may notice, is that bids in the US are actually led by the property owners, whilst here in the UK mainly we are led by the tenants. So obviously there are a few exceptions here in central London with a couple of property owners bids, but mainly it's tenants. So that kind of presents a potential challenge, because obviously property owners bids might have a long-term vision for the place, I guess. It might be messy, it might be not a unified vision, but if you like, they invest for the long term. Whilst for us in the UK, maybe we think about, maybe short term and creating value for the levy payers. And obviously, because we need to be re-elected every 5 years, we have to deliver value fairly quickly. But I guess, for me, the example of the twinning with Harlem, for us is to think a little bit beyond that, is to think beyond the short-term vision that we might have for a place, but kind of be looking back and learning from the past, and kind of making sure that that is still relevant into the future. So that's, if you like, from a very technical point of view, the difference between maybe the places and the bids. But in terms of the similarities, there are many that I can think of. Obviously, again, as places, the street life is very similar. I think we're both places where there is amazing change and opportunities coming for everyone, residents, visitors, and businesses, but also inequalities, and they kind of present themselves on the street. So if you like, the whole point of who owns the high streets, if everybody does and everybody has to contribute. For us as a bid, obviously we kind of try to come up with solutions that can solve some of the issues. However, obviously, property owners, local authorities, everybody that has a stake in the high street has to contribute to make it better.
Thank you, John Luca. Stephanie, from all the experiences that you have engaging stakeholders across the entire high street ecosystem, who do you find most easily take on their role as local stewards? I mean, you mentioned you found a man who's in charity, in a shop, but who tend to take on that role more easily?
I think it's a really good question, and just across some of the work that we do in different high streets and different centres, I guess the greatest thing is you never know until you get there. And the greatest thing is to keep that our minds open to that. We're doing some work in Purley and Croydon at the moment, and we've got some fierce and fantastic powerhouses, but you would never know. And it's almost just presenting that platform or just that ability to make that change. So we set up, for example, the Purley panel, which is the diverse and representative group, a bit of a steering group for the area. And there's a local mum who's she just has such great connections and she gets things done. And you would have expected from the outset that it would have been someone else. It would have been, you know, those who were part of the bids in that area, or part of other established groups. But actually, sometimes it's helping unlock some of that potential, or in Barking and Dagenham, as I was saying, in Dagenham, you'd never know that the guy behind the till was that informal mentor, and the lady in the charity shop inspiring with her shop front. She was like, I need to make people happy because they're really struggling here. And it's really amazing. It doesn't take that much money. It does take a bit of time just to understand, but it's really nice once you do unlock it, because then you can step back and let people really change the area that they want to, and the way that they want to, that's appropriate, because they really have that real energy and drive. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say it is a manager or it is a leader or anything like that.
Yeah, and we need more people like that. I mean, that kind of, they bring the energy to the high street. They are that community voice, and that sort of shine through them. So Rachel, I've got a question for you. You might say that Cross River Partnerships themselves are stewards of delivering the environmental, economic, community-focused project in central London sub-region. What do you think the opportunities and challenges are of having a high-level, large organisation coordinating all the initiatives versus the many small individual stewards of place, which we were just talking about with Stephanie, operating with relatively autonomy? In other words, what's the ideal scale for stewardship?
Yeah, I think, as you mentioned, there's lots of kind of individuals, different organisations that need to work together to enable the stewardship. I think for the report that I spoke about, the town centre features, the recommendations are siloed in a sense for local authorities, business improvement districts, businesses. But I think power really comes when everyone works together in a partnership. And yeah, for example, CRP bringing local authorities, landowners and other organisations together. If you all have the same goal, I think that's a great scale for partnership-wise to deliver, good high street.
And I've got one last question for all of you before we pass over to people in the audience online. So if we're aiming to create a more diverse and inclusive high street property sector, to what extent do we need diverse stewards? And is the current stewardship structure meeting those requirements?
I don't know, actually, I don't know, but I guess in terms of the learnings that we can share from Brixton, obviously, is that it has to be built within the culture of the organization of the place. Obviously, in Brixton, it's been happening organically and it's easy almost, but kind of identifying, I guess, I was referring to the place values, it's the creation of, not the creation, identifying those values. And, if we want to build diversity, inclusivity as core values in the high streets, we need to ensure that that is part of the policy, the planning, the thinking, in terms of, from an organization point of view, obviously.
Yeah,
I don't know if I've answered the question properly.
Yeah, no, as you say, it's quite clear that diversity is actually what makes a better high street, and completely.
Diversity from the different things that it might have, in terms of, like the day, the night, we use it from, young people to the elderly, like it's a diversity of, like use of, diversity means a lot, but, it's very important that, like for a successful place, we need to kind of, create places that are for everyone, like as I said, it can be children, it can be elderly people, it can be during the day, the night, for people that might have some more disposable income, some people that actually don't have a disposable income, they can still feel welcome and free to use the high street. And it doesn't have to be necessarily transactional. It doesn't have to necessarily mean spending money. It can be just using public spaces for a conversation, a chat with a neighbor, with somebody that you bumped into.
Stephanie, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think I just agree with a lot of what you said, and but it's just about that framework for change, really, or that framework for just allowing people to access the high street in the way that they want. I think that's why we're really focused on that kind of co-created vision. It's not saying that everyone needs to use the high street in the same way at the same time, but just understanding that different people have different needs. You know, something as simple as, you know, parents just needed a soft play area that they could also have their own time to maybe, you know, have their own networks together, where they wouldn't have to like cart around the entire borough, but it's just in one area, or young people needing to feel like they are permitted to use spaces without always feeling as if they're a threat to everyone else. So just understanding that there isn't a one size fits all. But there's always space and room, and a lot of the time the infrastructure to enable that inclusion of diverse voices, diverse uses, and really just understanding that each high street is unique and then should reflect that existing and the fact that they are changing quite quickly and users are changing quickly, and be able to adapt in the same way too.
Yeah, it's important that it's completely welcoming for all, because that's how you get everybody kind of like there in one place, celebrating the high street in their own way. Rachel, do you have anything to add to that?
I think it's, yeah, all been said, I completely agree. I think the high example I used is clearly something that community wanted, and they're getting good use out of it because it was something that was needed. So yeah, I'd love to hear more examples. Like you can that's what on in the networking organ.
Okay, and I'd like to hand over to the audience. If you've got any questions that you would like to ask the panelists, one at the back.
Hello, I'm Gianluca and the panel, Susie Barlow from Means. Just a quick question. I was interested to hear if any or all of you have some examples of where the conflict of interest between those different user groups has perhaps been dealt with well. We've got some work we're doing at the moment in Elephant and Castle where, as you've just said, Sophie, is it?
And Stephanie,
there are big groups of young people and other users of the town centre are saying they find that intimidating. So I'm interested to hear kind of whether you've come across situations where you've been able to kind of manage that balance, or you've seen it done well.
Yeah, really good question. Sometimes when we brought some community together, we're like, we now know where they don't move. But it's about that understanding of like what are the barriers and what do people need. So for example, in Barking's having a very high youth population, and people do feel threatened by the large amount of young people just coming into the area after school. But you'll then speak to the young people and they'll say, we just want a place where we can do our homework or meet in a variety of spaces, knowing that some young people also don't need to be in the same place as other young people, which is quite an issue across London actually. But then understanding that there is a lot of energy in the community to support young people too, through mentorship, through social mobility, like enabling them to give them some advice, like having that access with someone who's professional. Or we have a lot of people here who are young professionals that I just want to show young people that they can be like me. So it's always just providing those spaces to like variety of spaces for different people, understanding young people are also not monolith, but then also showcasing that to some of the older people, saying young people are also struggling, they also need opportunities, they also feel unwanted, and just knowing that maybe it's not the same space at the same time, but also forging those connections is quite nice. When a young person can speak to an older person and vice versa, it's also quite nice for them to just understand that they're all human. You know, I've had quite a few conversations, a bit different to the young people conversation about, you know, I don't need to be racist, but it will just be a conversation about why black hair takes a really long time to do, or why the shops are open. You know, it's just about understanding different experiences and different uses of space that may seem challenging. And so that's what we're finding at the moment, a deep dive, communicating that back and then providing for each person. So they're not always just having to look at others because they're directly being fulfilled. Bit of a lengthy answer, but it's always changing what we've found.
Any more questions?
So first, I'd like to thank the speakers. I thought it terrific presentations. Thank you. I've got a very general question about air quality. What do you think are the barriers to either the developers, the property owners, the people in the communities, recognising that our canals and rivers are a terrific way to get goods and services into their areas?
Would anybody like to take that question? Rachel.
Back into the partnership through our clean energy logistics programme, but I would say I think the main barrier is a cost, because we've done river freight trials which have enabled, for example, stationary companies to take their freight along the river. But if businesses don't know that it's an option, not too many businesses are using the river, therefore costs are relatively high for those goods. I think on land transport from piers into, for example, we trialled with the North Bank bid, taking goods inland via cargo bike, but that requires coordination from the boat itself to businesses. But of course, it's really, well, it's been proven that it's a better way, air quality wise, to take goods across London, and it's a really amazing asset that we have. So if we can get more businesses to deliver freight along the river, then that's a really good thing.
I think there was one question at the back, and then we'll take it to this gentleman, and then perhaps some questions from online, maybe two from online.
Should we be optimistic or pessimistic about the future of high streets?
That's a trick question.
I think it's almost like a recurring narrative about that of the high street. But for me, like, high street have been surviving and thriving across centuries anyway. So for every challenge that we face, we have the resilience to kind of come back in a better way. I think, this is what high streets are about. This is what London is about. I'm not feeling particularly optimistic in general, about think that everybody probably will struggle nowadays to feel optimistic. But in terms of the high street, is a narrative that kind of, I think we need to move away from, and we need to focus about, like a place for community, for creatives to testing ideas, like every time that they're constantly changing. And I think, the whole point here is about change, and, how we as individuals kind of perceive change, and we need to kind of embrace it and be part of it rather than kind of feel scared and get involved in shaping what the change means for us in our high streets.
Yep.
Speaking to this for the people online, the community consultation you did in Dagenham was pretty exemplary, but it was very place-based, as in, it seemed to me you're talking to a lot of people who were there because of the physicality of the pop-up you did. But it's the people that don't use the space and probably the people you really need to talk to. So how did you reach out to the people that can't access the town for whatever reason, or don't want to even? There's often actually the people who want to get in to the town and people who don't use it. So how do you square that up? How do you really make it the most exemplar, inclusive public consultation you can possibly have?
Not winning.
Always winning, always
Not
optimistic. No, I think good question. I think before I was saying we're really clear on, who are the demographic we need to reach, and the shop was almost, we are here, just to show that we are here. But we put together a strategy. So we had online drop-ins, we had questionnaires, we had promoted social media posts, we did street conversations, we set up our pink gazebo in all different areas within Dagenham. We went to their youth project, which is it was a youth zone actually, so we went directly to them. We also got young people or young professionals to run their own focus groups to feed back to us, knowing that we may not be the right people to ask them directly to get an honest answer back. We spoke to people from pupil referral units. So we really went out into the community, but that was almost a bit of, we are here. So a bit of showcasing, allowing people to see a change, to see a difference. But you're right, you can't just wait for people to come to you, because you end up getting the same people, same voices, those who feel empowered. And it really is about reaching out to those who don't feel like they have a voice or an opinion, or who have ever been heard before. So we were very clear to ensure we did that, you know, working with all sorts of groups. But yeah, it's so important. So I'm really glad that you asked that question.
Thank you. I did want to, just conscious of time, but is there a potential for one online question that we can ask?
Yeah, we have one online question from Asmina. I think it's for Stephanie. It says, one of the reasons why some people don't use the high streets is because there's a lack of toilet facilities. Were you able to persuade some shops to open the toilet facilities?
Yeah, we always get that. I think the most frustrating about our experience was there was a toilet facility in the centre that they had just closed because they didn't have enough staff to manage it, or they were worried about the issues that came with opening those toilets. But for our accessibility workshops, it was not only a place to use the toilet, a place to, you know, a place to change from all different types of people. But it's number one across anywhere that we do work. It's public toilets, and it's a real issue that I think is a real barrier to inclusion.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I just want to say a massive thank you to our panelists and for your presentations earlier on. Really interesting to hear what you had to tell us and share some examples as well. And I just wanted to thank our founding partners, Cross River Partnership, for co-hosting this event today, and for all of you attending. And lastly, it doesn't matter of laughter, but anyway, as mentioned in my introduction, you know, Property Exchange is about diverse contributors across the high street in the property sector. So if you have any kind of like innovative examples or best practice case studies, or you want to have a discussion, please do reach out to us, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter. And thank you everybody for joining us today.